just entered in. We've had a few people coming in. Put your name and organization in the chat. So we are recording this session for educational and quality improvement purposes. By participating, you're consenting to be recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect from the session. We are a community of practice. We really encourage participation and feedback and just talking with each other. And that's why we love being able to introduce ourselves in the chat so we can all get to know each other. For our ECHO session today, we will start with a didactic speaker, and she will be presenting until about 2 o'clock, and then we will have a real situations, real solutions presentation and discussion, and then we will break out into breakout rooms and discuss solutions to that for the last half hour. We ask that you protect individual privacy. When you're sharing information, please de-identify any people or situations. If you could rename your Zoom profile to your name and your organization, that would be great. And then throughout the presentation, if you have any questions or comments, you can feel free to raise your hand and Erin will make sure and call on you, or you can just unmute, or you can put questions into the chat and we'll make sure that those get read out. To get a certificate of attendance for today, just make sure you fill out our feedback survey. The feedback survey is super fast and it just lets us know what you find useful and what you find helpful and will help us as we continue forward with these ECHO sessions. And if you have not received a certificate from last session, we just had a ton of people who filled out the survey. We really appreciate it. And we're just working on getting those finished. So those should be to you in the next couple of weeks. We do have a Canvas page and a website. On both of those, you can find past sessions and you can find handouts and resources. We did send out an email to all of you today of some of the resources you can use, but if you ever can't find them or want some from a past session, we'll make sure to upload those on our Canvas and website. And if you have any issues accessing the Canvas, you can reach out to Faustine. So we have the last half hour of these sessions is the real situations, real solutions presentation. I just want to put a little plug. We hope that you all stay for the last half hour. I know sometimes these meetings can hit in weird spots with it, with the time they are, but it's really helpful to just discuss with your peers and find solutions. And it's really a super helpful part of ECHO where you can put the things and the theories that we're learning into practice a little bit more. And if you have anything that your program is struggling with and you want feedback from everyone, feel free to reach out to us and we would love to have you present. Our next session is going to be September 23rd from 1 to 2:30 p.m. And the topic is, it's part 2 of this topic today. So if you're on here today, we highly encourage you coming to the one in September. It'll be a continuation of this topic, and it'll be about positive caregiving practices and preventing challenging behaviors in early intervention. And then in a couple months, starting in November, we'll have a new series starting, and we just wanted to take a quick moment to take a poll to know what time is best for you guys. The past few months, we've had these from 1 to 2:30, but we know that in childcare providers and early intervention providers get really busy. So if you could just take a moment to vote in the poll on what time works best for you all. And we'll just do that for a couple of minutes. And as you guys are voting, please continue sending your polls in, but I'll just give a little quick introduction. Our session presenter today is Erin Barton. She is an incredible early intervention professional. She's pretty much wrote the book on EI with the pyramid model. We're very excited to have her continue presenting in this series that we've had going on. And the session she will be talking about today is effective family-centered coaching. So with that, keep getting your answers in, but with that, I will turn the time over to Erin.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm excited to be here today, and as Hannah said, today we're starting what is really a 2-part session. So we're going to talk a lot about family coaching, and today we're really going to talk about the foundations of family coaching. And next month, September 23rd, we're going to talk about specific coaching practices and supporting parents and using these practices to support their child's social emotional competence and to prevent challenging behaviors. We always start this with when I talk about this, with an overview of the pyramid model. And I just want to say quickly too, I'm getting over a cold. My son started school 3 weeks ago and has already brought home all of the back to school germs. So I'm on the back end of a cold. So if I need to stop and take a drink or cough, just know that that's what's happening. Um, so the pyramid model is a framework for supporting families. Well, the pyramid model overall is a framework for supporting the social emotional competence of all young children. When we talk about the pyramid model in part C, the pyramid model is in part C, we apply it to families. In early intervention, we talk about working directly with families. So the pyramid model is the framework that supports what we do, the practices we use to support families in supporting their child's social emotional competence, which is something you've heard me talk quite a bit about the last two sessions in June and July, where we really introduced kind of the family coaching, coaching approach to the pyramid model. It is a tiered model of supports. So of course, at the base, we have the effective workforce. And then the universal level are nurturing and responsive relationships and high quality environments. And in part C, in early intervention, what we talk about there are supporting families in establishing and creating a nurturing and responsive relationship with their child. So we, as home visitors or practitioners, we develop a nurturing and responsive relationship with families so that we then can support families in creating and maintaining a nurturing and responsive relationship with their child. And then we support families in creating and making sure that the environment is supportive and engaging and allows the child to fully participate as a member of that family. We often do that with families through their homes routines, the things that families do every day. And then it is a tiered model. So those are the universal supports. That's what we do with all families. But that we also know, even within Part C, we have some infants and toddlers and families who need more targeted supports around specific social emotional goals. And so we have some specific targeted social emotional supports that we support families, we coach families in using with their infants and toddlers to support their infants and toddlers' social emotional development. And we know some families, some infants and toddlers will need more specific, more targeted supports. And then the tertiary level in Part C, or the top of the pyramid, as it's often called, are more intensive individualized supports. And those within Part C, that really refers to toddlers who are engaging in severe and persistent challenging behavior. And we expect that to be very, very, very few toddlers. But of course, we might have some. But the important thing there to note is that at every level of the pyramid and all of the work is focused on preventing challenging behaviors from becoming persistent and severe. Knowing that, especially with infants and toddlers, challenging behaviors are developmentally appropriate. We expect infants and toddlers to engage in some challenging behaviors. And so it's up to us to support their families in creating and designing environments that are supportive and in establishing and maintaining nurturing and responsive relationships to support infants and toddlers in their social emotional competence. So that's just an overview of the pyramid model. Today, we're going to get through most of part one, which is really the foundations of family coaching. So I'm going to talk about understanding why we support families and understanding why we support caregivers in supporting their child, their infant and toddler social emotional competence. We're going to talk a lot about family-centered and family capacity building. We're going to talk about specific coaching and triadic coaching strategies. And we're going to talk about how to create environments in which we can support families in embedding learning opportunities. And then next week, we're going to get into really specific coaching practices to use to support families in preventing challenging behaviors. The rationale for coaching with caregivers is really because the parent-caregiver-child relationship is the context in which infants and toddlers and young children develop social emotional competence. So they learn how to communicate, how to be social, a sense of self, how to interact with others, what social cues to use, what language to use, how to talk about emotions, how to express emotions, how to talk to adults, how to talk to peers. They learn all those skills within the context of those very early healthy attachment relationships. And then when we coach with families and with caregivers, we really focus on what interactions are occurring within the natural environment. And really, when we talk about Part C in early intervention, that's the law. So IDEA defines what we do with families within early intervention. And the law states that we provide our services in the natural environment to families, which most of the time is the home, can be also childcare, but a lot of the time is the home. And so in the home, what we talk about are the daily routines that the family engages in. What's tricky there is that families themselves don't necessarily talk about routines. They don't even necessarily use the word routines, right? But we know that routines are what happens every day. And so we support families within those routines, those things that are happening every day, during their interactions within those routines to support their child's social emotional competence. And our goal always, our overarching goal all of the time is enhancing parents' confidence and competence. So we're always supporting parents to enhance their confidence in knowing that they have everything they need to support their child's social emotional competence and to support their competence over time. We know from years and years of research, and these are just some examples, that when families are involved with their child's care, when families are directly involved with the services and supports that are provided within early intervention, the families and the children benefit greatly. And this is in response to or instead of when what used to happen, and sometimes still happens, but we're really moving away from this as a field, is when we would just have direct service providers come in and spend an hour with the child alone and just provide direct service to the child in the home. That was fine, but we know that services are more effective, more efficient when we target that relationship, when we target those routines, when we target what the family's doing. Then the child has an infinite number of learning opportunities that occur throughout the day. And then we're supporting that relationship between the family, the caregiver, and the child, which will have lasting benefits. So the benefits to the family and the child are much greater when we support the family rather than just provide direct services to the child. We know that parent-mediated strategies are more effective than when we just go in and provide services directly to the child. We know that we really need parent participation to be successful. We know that supporting parents in enhancing and improving their daily routines and in embedding interactions, embedding learning opportunities into those routines means that the child's going to experience many more learning opportunities across their lifetimes. And we know that interventions are only successful when they result in an increase in learning opportunities. And we know that really what we're doing here is enhancing that relationship between the caregiver and the child. And we know that the benefits of that are lasting. And these are just some examples of research that we've talked about and we've used to really support the use of the pyramid model and support the use of family coaching in early intervention. So we know that teaching parents to use responsive interaction skills, teaching parents to respond and interact with their infant and toddler in ways that are supportive of that attachment relationship have lasting benefits for the child and are most effective. And we also know that these approaches, when we support the family and the child, these approaches have benefits for the family and the child, not just the child, and really do support that caregiving relationship over time. Our work is also very much grounded in the Division for Early Childhood Recommended Practices, which really are the practices that guide the field and the work we do within the field. The DC Recommended Practices has many different practices, but there's 3 different kind of categories in which they categorize a lot of their interaction and intervention practices. And those are family-centered practices where families really are part of the decision-making process and where families really are the center of what we do. And embedded in that is that we're using family capacity building practices. And that's really what coaching is, where we are going in and coaching the family, building their capacity to support their infant and toddler in their home across their daily routines and activities. And we're always using a decision-making model where the family is at the center, and the family is part of the biggest part of how decisions are made regarding goals and how an intervention and targeted supports. We know that family-centered practices are best because the work there then becomes strengthening the family's capacity, which when we're strengthening the family's capacity, we know that we're going to impact outcomes, not just in the immediate sense, in terms of what's happening right now for the infant and toddler, but in the long term also, because we're increasing the family's capacity to support their child's social emotional competence, while also enhancing family routines, while also having our priority being strengthening that relationship, that attachment relationship between the child and the caregiver, and that's going to have lasting benefits. And I don't know why my formatting is off a little bit for this slide, but anyway, it is. I'm sorry about that. Family-centered practices also have these kind of 4 pillars to them. And the first one is that we embrace and we honor that the families play the primary role in children's development and learning. And that's especially true for infants and toddlers, right? I mean, it's really true throughout the lifetime. But we really honor that families play the primary role in children's development and learning. And we want to build their capacity to do that and to continue to do that. We uphold every family's right to make decisions for and with their children. So we engage families in ongoing decision-making over time. And then we also are always using culturally responsive practices. And last month, I talked about communication and effective communication strategies and building relationships. So the last 2 sessions were really a lot about building relationships with families. And we do that in ways that are culturally responsive. And that means that we are taking time to intentionally establish and build and maintain that relationship with families so that we can engage in collaborative decision-making with families and so that we can build families' capacity to support their child's social emotional competence. We always presume competence, and that means that we have really high expectations, and we know that families are at the center of learning for their own child. We are open and willing to appreciate that there are many different ways of doing things, and that there might be multiple ways of approaching something, and that our views might be different from families' views. And so we support many different forms of engagement and participation for families. I'm going to just stop here for a second because I've been talking and talking. Are there any questions? questions or comments?
This is Amanda. I don't have a question, but I have a comment. So you mentioned the word routines, and you were saying how parents don't usually use the word routines.
Mhm.
And we were going over the EPV, and one of them says, like, do you use jargon with the families? And I was like, well, I'm pretty good about explaining things. Anyway, I didn't think I was using jargon, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't think I was using jargon, but I've also been in this field for 25 years. So I had a visit the very next week with the family, and it was a brand new family, young, super little baby. And I was trying to talk about I was explaining how we're going to implement, strategies into routines. I wanted to support you in routines. And, anyway, I kept using the word routines. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, mom says, what's a routine?
Yeah.
What do you mean a routine?
Aw.
So anyway, so sometimes even words we use all the time. So I said, well, routine would be like every time you change your diaper, every time you give her a bath. These are times of your day that are typically repeat themselves with it, and she was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
But anyway, it just made me kind of chuckle. So
that's
I
wonderful.
thought I was doing so good explaining, and then she said, what's a routine?
That's great. Yeah, that's a perfect example. And thank you so much for sharing that. That's really, really helpful. And exactly what we're talking about. And I love that for so many reasons, because I think one thing that I want us always to do, and that I'm also doing, is recognizing that we are always, always learning, right? We're always learning. It doesn't matter if we've been in the field for 50 years or 50 days, right? We're always learning. And absolutely, who knew that, the words we've been using forever, are words that not all families necessarily understand, right? Yeah, it's a good idea to continually self-reflect and think about, the words we're using with families and the way we're communicating with families too. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Amanda. That's great. And truthfully, it wasn't really until recently that we started talking about that specific word in this training too. We used to always, we had everything was routines, like routines-based interviewing, routines were the word that we used all the time in early childhood. And it probably wasn't really until I had my own child and was around more regular parents who weren't parents in the field of early intervention that I was like, oh yeah, routines are not a word that everybody uses all the time. They just do bath time. They don't call it the bath time routine, And so that's a really good point. Are there other questions or comments? Hey, I'm going to keep going. If there are, feel free to just raise your hand or unmute yourself and let me know, or put a chat in the chat box. Put a comment in the chat box. This cold has taken parts of my brain away too, but I'm on the back end of it, so I'm doing much better than I was this weekend. Okay. The role of the early interventionist also is important to talk to caregivers about when you're working with families. What is the role? What are we going to do during early intervention? And the way we see the role of early interventionists when we use family capacity building and family coaching is really to collaborate with caregivers. And I know we use that term, collaborate with caregivers, and collaborate often. And I want to really emphasize that what we really mean here is engage in shared decision making. So no, like, of course, we're all going to come to home visits and sessions with families prepared with, a sense of what's going to happen, a sense of what the goals might be, a sense of what, we're going to talk about, but really intentionally going with the willingness and openness to leave with different goals, or with the willingness to have a discussion with families around what their goals are for their infant and toddler, what their goals are for their family, and how they want to get there. You might have You might have a, a specific goal you're working on with a family, and have like several strategies that have worked really, really well with other families, and you want to use those again with this family, but this family's like, no, those won't work, or we do this, or that absolutely doesn't happen in my home. And so be really open to having very intentional collaborative conversations with caregivers. And that is the best way to start to help families build their confidence, and then competence over time. And then help families and caregivers identify when natural, typical learning opportunities happen. And typical natural learning opportunities are going to be times of the day during those routines that, of course, we know are routines, but families don't use that word. Times of the day where the child is engaged and there are those interactions that are occurring between the caregiver and the child, which for infants and toddlers are often things like diapering or bath time or meal times, or, getting in the car on the way to childcare. Routines and times of the day where the child and the caregiver are engaged. And we want to make sure, though, that learning only occurs, well, we know, and we want to make sure we're supporting caregivers and understanding that learning occurs when the routines are going kind of neutral or well, right? If a diapering is something that the infant hates and we just want diapering to be quick because the infant is screaming the whole time, then that's not going to be a learning opportunity. That's not going to be when we're going to support the family in embedding new skills or new things, because the infant doesn't like it and it's not engaging and there's not those quality interactions happening. The adult is supporting the infant through it, and what we might work on is supporting the caregiver, the adult, in supporting that infant and making the diapering routine more tolerable and making it a better routine for the infant, but it wouldn't be where we're embedding something else. So we're working with the family to identify learning opportunities that occur throughout the day, that are times of the day where the interactions are positive or neutral. They don't have to be like super exciting and fun, but they can be just neutral, but not a time where the child is very unhappy, which for some kids, bedtime, diapering, bath time can be awful, right? And so those wouldn't be learning opportunities. But for some children, they might be great ones. And they don't even have to be like typical things that happen. It can just be like morning after mom's had her coffee and they're, just like chilling, waiting for, or in the afternoon, waiting for siblings to come home from school. It doesn't have to be like a thing that we know is a routine. It can be something kind of outside of the box, which is just a time of the day where the child is kind of neutral or engaged. And what we're always doing during those times are supporting caregivers in maintaining those interactions and that dyadic relationship with their infant and toddler, and then implementing those strategies during those routines and activities that are happening across the day. And we're also supporting caregivers always, and we talked a little bit about this the last session, in identifying community resources that might be helpful to the family. So that's another role of the early interventionist. And this slide, with lots of arrows all over the place, really highlights what we mean by supporting, what really highlights our approach to family coaching, in that the family coach, the early interventionist, is the triadic piece, the third piece kind of in that, the figure here. And what their goal is always focused on is enhancing those dyadic interactions. So we have the caregiver and the child up at the top on the left and the right, and that dyadic interaction arrow that stretches from the parent to the child, that is the target always of our interaction. The context of that are the daily activities, routines that families are engaging in, and that's happening all day long. The triadic strategies are the coaching strategies we're using to support the parent-child interactions. And so what we know, the reason why we know this is so important is we know that social emotional competence develops and occurs within the context of that relationship between the parent and the child. So our work is always to make sure those interactions are engaging and that everyone, both people, the parent and the child, are fully participating, and that the parent we're building their confidence and competence to make those interactions learning opportunities for the child. And learning opportunities mean not that the child's like learning colors and numbers and those sorts of things, but just learning that this is a strong attachment relationship can be the focus. The child learning to trust the caregiver, learning that that's the person who's gonna love me unconditionally. That's the person who's going to support me in getting my needs met. That is the focus of what we're doing. And this figure is from the Pee-wee model, which Tweety Yates developed, and it's called Parents Interacting with Infants. And we've taken that and applied it to this work as well, because it's so relevant for what we're doing in early intervention. And then these are the triadic strategies, some examples of triadic strategies that we use. So we're always establishing that dyadic context. So whether it's, playing on the floor with books and that can be the case, playing on the floor with books and toys, whatever. But we also want to make sure that parents know and caregivers know we're not coming in and saying, you have to spend, 15 minutes a day on the floor with your child playing with them. No, absolutely not. What we're saying is we're going to help you create natural learning opportunities and positive interactions throughout the day during things that you're already doing. We're always going to be acknowledging and affirming and building parents' confidence and competence. We're going to make sure we focus attention and have help families kind of focus their attention. We're going to provide developmental information, and all we mean by that is that supporting the child's supporting developmentally appropriate social emotional skills. Also knowing that and this is a whole nother thing we could talk about for days, but knowing that developmental milestones are also culturally driven. So yes, there are ranges for what we would expect, and always typically a sequence for social emotional skills, but they're not hard and fast rules where we would say, by 12 months you have to be talking. But we're going to be supporting parents in understanding kind of developmental information, and that they're very much culturally driven and using a collaborative decision-making model to identify goals. We might do some modeling, meaning we might model, maybe it's like how to open a book so that you, the caregiver, and the child can see it, or maybe how to support the child. I think we have some videos where there's a child who's learning to roll over one way versus the other. And so we might do some modeling, but we're going to limit our modeling, because if we do too much modeling, then it tells the parents, that we're the expert and they aren't necessarily the expert. So we want to make sure that we limit our modeling, and we do a lot more suggesting. Suggesting then leaves it in the parents' hands, like, does this make sense to you? Versus just modeling, saying this is what I would do. And so we use these rules to guide our triadic work with families, always, always being very empathetic and putting yourself in the parent's shoes, so that we provide a level of support that makes sense to the family. We're always focusing on the family's strengths. We're absolutely always building the family's confidence and competence. We are limiting modeling and using a lot of more suggesting, but also limiting suggesting. We don't want to doing that. We don't want to do that for everything. We're really supporting the families in coming up with decisions. And we're using kind of the least directive strategy that families might need. We're also making sure that families understand, or that we understand, and we've had discussions about parent expectations, and that we talk about the process, the content, and the relationship. And that with families, we're using what families their learning style might be, their approach to getting new information, that what content is important to the family, and that we're always focused on the relationship also, and that we're always working on and building that relationship. One of the things we often do in early intervention is support caregivers in understanding their child's cues and what their children are saying. And so one way to do that kind of in a soft way is to use the child's voice, use another way to think about softening what you're doing rather than just being very directive is to use indirect statements rather than very direct statements. So on the last visit, I saw you do this. He seems to like it when you do this. And then always supporting families' confidence and competence. So this is just an example of a way to do that where it's kind of supporting the family's confidence and competence. That's such a great idea that you came up with. Putting the paper tool tab on the cabinet to her to play with while you cook dinner. And you can talk to her while you cook, and she's practiced using her grasp with her fingers. Way to go. And so things like that, I think can sound kind of, minimal, like they don't sound like they're that important, but those kinds of statements can go such a long way to supporting families' confidence and competence. Okay, so we do have a couple of videos here. We're going to watch both videos, and what I want you to do in these videos, you should be able to hear, they'll come directly from my computer, is I really want you to look at how you might characterize the dyadic relationship here, and then how the dyadic relationship supports social emotional competence. And then we'll also talk about the triadic strategies and what triadic strategies the early interventionist used to support that dyadic relationship. Remember, we're focused on the dyadic relationship between the caregiver and the child. So I want you to look at these videos and really think about that. We're going to watch the first one, stop and talk about it, and then we'll watch the second one and stop and talk about it. And I, of course, always want you to think about what you might have done differently, knowing there's no perfect EI visit at all. And every early interventionist approaches it differently, and what you might have done differently here.
I want to focus too, and that he rolls to this side, but not to the other hand. So I want to work on that too.
Okay. Are you rolling from his tummy to his back, or from his back to his tummy?
I would say to his back to his tummy. Yeah.
Let's put you over.
Because he's good to this side, but not to the other one.
And yeah, and one of the best ways to do that is just like you kind of have that, you've already got your leg right there to kind of block him so he can't go that way.
Okay.
And then what's like his favorite thing to play with?
I would say probably put music back to
See if this will work. You get the balls, they give him something really exciting to reach. Oh yeah. You want to? Well. And there you go.
That was fun.
Should we try it again?
Well, let's try to this side.
Try it again.
Okay. Let's try to do it.
Which way?
Sorry. So maybe it's.
Or is it that?
I'm confused.
Let's see.
Mira, aquí. Ven. Ven. Dale. Dale. I think. Dale. I think it's this side.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, because his arm gets kind of stuck there. Dale. Mira. Mira, juguetes. Mira, juguetes. Levántate. Eso, levántate. Levántate. Venga. Eso. Levántate, arriba. Push, push, levántate. Oh, you did it.
Really?
Aquí, mira, ¿vale? Sí, aquí. Ya. ¿Vale? Ruédate. Eso. Dale. Dale para allá. Péstate. Eso. Ahora para allá. Para allá. Sí. Eso. Yeah, he's good at that side, but not that way. Levántate. Así. ¿Quedaste? Dale, papá. Arriba, arriba. Eso. ¿Viste? Wow. Get it? One more.
So have you noticed if there's any difference, like when he starts rolling? Is there any difference in how he holds his arms when he goes this way from when he goes that way?
Not really.
Trying to see, maybe watch for that and see if we notice anything.
Okay, that was the first video, so I'd love to hear from you. You know, what you saw in that relationship between the caregiver and her son. And maybe what you saw the early interventionist do, who's the woman over here on the right, to support that relationship and build the mom's confidence and competence. And of course, what you might do differently. You can put it in the chat, unmute yourself, whatever you feel comfortable doing.
I did notice at the very end, that very last question she asked was an open-ended question that allowed mom to just interact more instead of just being the yes or no short-ended.
Yep, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, it was. Anything else?
I think she was really trying to listen to the parent and really focusing on what the parent was, what the parent felt was the priority or wanted to see happen.
Mm-hmm.
One little thing that I noticed is just that she said, oh, one of the best ways to do this is to put your leg there. And so just after our conversation, I'm like, oh, maybe that could have been worded a little differently, but
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like just one way instead of the best. Yeah. Yeah, Debbie, that's something too I always think about in this video too. I know part of it was part of what was happening here is making room for the videographer to be able to see everything. But I also would have wanted, yeah, mom and provider to maybe switch places so that mom could have done everything with the child instead of both of them working with the child. So rather than the provider kind of being another person there to interact with the child, really having the provider interact with the caregiver only to support that relationship. And that would have changed how they were sitting. I would have loved to have mom be the only one who touched the toys too, you know, to make sure that mom was kind of figuring out how that might work as he was rolling over. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Okay, now we're gonna watch one more. Oops, not that one. This is another, just same things I want you to look for. A little bit older child, but also in early intervention part C.
You can have a break. You can have a break. Play with those jacks.
If they can like figure it out. Like kind of
If
wait.
he can,
and
okay.
see if they'll like look to you
For help, okay. Hmm. Well. Do you need help? Yeah. Oh, help? Help? Oh, open, good, you want me to open it? Let's see, what's in there? Jacks? Ooh, I see it.
A shorter video, but what did you see there? So we didn't see the provider in this video, but she is there. It's Ashley McNish, actually, who works with me on all this work. She's just off to the side. Yeah, she did do a good job. Yeah, she suggested mom wait and see. Mom did a great job modeling. Yeah, exactly. I agree, Debbie. Yeah. Yeah. So those were just two examples of videos of video examples of home visits in which the early interventionist is really focused on supporting building caregivers' competence and confidence while focusing on supporting that interaction between the caregiver and the child. We also, with family coaching, of course, focus on the environment and the supporting high quality environments. One thing that we talk about a lot in family coaching and in the early intervention in the pyramid model approach, that we talk a lot about what's wrong with the toy bag. So, and we talk a lot about doing family coaching that then means we don't use a toy bag. And there are two things I want to emphasize here. One is that it's not the toy bag itself that's inherently a problem at all, although it does do all these things on this slide. But it not using a toy bag supports family coaching. And what I also want to emphasize, because sometimes it gets kind of interpreted the wrong way, is in the pyramid model, it's a framework that supports social caregivers building their confidence and competence and supporting their child's social emotional competence. And we do that using a variety of practices and best practices. So quite honestly, the toy bag and not using a toy bag in family coaching is best practice based on the broader field that really has nothing directly to do with the pyramid model. But other than in the pyramid model, we talk about using best practice all the time. And that is right now family coaching and early intervention, which means that early interventionists are not bringing in a toy bag. Because if we do bring in a toy bag, then it tells caregivers learning only happens when we come or when we come with these toys and doesn't necessarily match learning opportunities that occur. So when we are identifying what toys, what materials to use, we're using the materials that are natural, that are typical to the activity that the family and the child are doing, right? And so we talk about what caregivers are in the home or in the environment already. And knowing too that we can support that caregiving relationship without materials, right? There are lots of ways we can do that throughout the day without materials. So we also often talk about working smarter, not harder. We work with the caregiver to identify what are the things that they do every day in a similar way so that we can identify practice opportunities and individual preferences and priorities. We are always focused on those routines and activities. Routines really are the curriculum that occurs. And I just have a couple more slides and then we'll be finished because I want to leave time for, there's a quick video that I want to watch at the end that I think is really fun to watch, and I want to leave time for questions. So I'm just going to go through this really quickly. You have the slides, and it's not important at all the only thing I want you to get from this is that, in fact, I never, ever want you to use the term complete learning trial with families. But what I want you to understand is that what we're helping families do is embed this throughout the day, times of the day that are working well. So we're supporting families in thinking about kind of what's the antecedent, what behavior do you want the child to do, and then what is the feedback that you're going to give the child. So you are supporting families and caregivers in embedding learning opportunities, but not at all using that term. So these are just some examples, and you have these on your slides. You also have, I shared these handouts. I love this handout that we created to go along with this material that really is the Caregiver Responsive Routines Planning Form to help you work with caregivers around how to embed learning across routines. And it walks you through how to do that. Okay, and so just for the last few minutes, we're going to watch this video. It's a little bit older. It's like 15 years old, I think. But I love it. It's still a really good video, and I still stand by sharing it and using it because I love it so much. This was a family we worked with a long time ago, but we worked with around this one hand washing routine that was not going well. And so this is an example of a routine for the family that was not going well at all, but was very important to the family and was something that they wanted to work on to improve this routine. So I'm just going to tell you, you might want to turn the volume down. Actually, I will turn it down also because there's some crying and the toddler is very upset during this. It's just hand washing. He's not upset about anything. I mean, he's upset. It's hand washing. He doesn't like it. Okay. I turned the volume way down because you can see he's crying.
Let's see. Okay, come on. Yeah, you are okay. Good for it. In the morning. Yep. Okay.
Okay. I mean, we've all been there, right? All of us. So we helped this mom arrange the environment and do some things a little bit differently using the routine planning form that we had at the time. And I want you to watch the post video.
Watch it. Turn it off. Turn it on. Yeah. It's cooked. That's cooked. Yeah, that's a cook. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Feel good. Feel good. Feel good. Oh, yeah. Feel good. What is it? What's that? What it is? Soap. It's soap. Yeah, soap. Yeah, it's soap. Soap.
So you can see in this video, the routine is much more pleasant. The child is not crying. Many more learning opportunities can happen. And now I think what's most important that I think you can see, hopefully, is that the caregiver and the child are having this great interaction, which is just going to help support that relationship between the caregiver and the child. And I know I'm at the end of my time, so we're just going to close with these two questions. And then this is part two where we really dive into specific coaching strategies that we're going to go into next month. But before I get off and before I release you to do your case study activity, I just want to see if there's any comments or questions or thoughts for me. Yeah, you're welcome. Those videos are a little bit dated, but I just love how different they are and the just really simple ways. They gave him a footstool to stand on and let mom stand next to him rather than behind him. And yeah, the child needs routine, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, anything else? All right, Hannah, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin. And
You're
those
so
video
welcome.
examples were great. It was awesome to see the difference. I'm sure it made a world of difference to the mom as well.
It did, for sure. And think about it, for toddlers, especially, hand washing occurs so many times throughout the day. So, yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And everyone,
Thank
make sure to come back on September 23rd for the part 2 of this. And with that, we will now move into our last half hour. Oh, just a quick reminder, if you didn't get a chance to fill out the poll on what time works best for you for these meetings, please go ahead and do so. And we will go into our real situations, real solutions. So for any of you who have not attended an ECHO before, Crystal's just going to give a short presentation on a family that someone in her organization is working with, and then we will move into breakout rooms and discuss a little bit about what solutions we could help brainstorm to help this family. So let me pull up your presentation. Okay, and whenever you're ready, Crystal.
Okay, so I'm Crystal Giga. I'm the Early Intervention Director at Root for Kids. We serve Washington County, San Juan County, and then a couple of small communities in northern Arizona. We have mostly rural and frontier areas. This family that I'm presenting is actually on my caseload recently, and we haven't quite written the individual family service plan yet, but bear with me because this was kind of my explanation of what I saw and what I feel like we have going on. So this family lives in a pretty remote area. They are recently separated. The dad lives with his parents, and the mom lives in a single wide trailer on a gravel lot. She's just got a new job working in a casino, and her schedule is different every day. She has an older school-age child that has been diagnosed with ADHD and ASD, and that child is babysat by the landlord and gets help with homework. And then this child, who is 2, she said that was too much for that babysitter, and so he goes to his father's parents' house for childcare while she's at work. She introduced the child to me as the result of a backseat encounter that she regrets. Even when I asked for about the date of birth, she said he came at the wrong time. The father lives with his parents that only speak Spanish. And so when he's babysat there, he's exposed to Spanish. And the mother has told me that she's sometimes impatient with her children. She gets them dressed and does a lot of things for them. She also reported spanking on the butt and losing her temper when he wakes up in the night. Multiple times she talked about how at dad's house, dad reports that he sleeps through the night and doesn't have any problems, but at her house he does. She also admits to smoking marijuana when she was pregnant with him for her nausea. Her concerns are that he's not speaking, that he's showing anger and aggression towards people and animals. He kicks and hits them. There are 2 small dogs in the trailer. He only has a few consistent words. They are no, ma, dad, but she's not sure that they mean anything. Owie, ball, and he says, oh, for hot. He grunts and cries, points, whines, tugs to get his needs met. She has been, we have tried getting hearing and vision screenings. He won't make eye contact for the vision, won't hold still long enough for the vision screen, and he doesn't want anyone touching his ears. His pediatrician, well, he went into the doctor and they did say that he needs tubes. She hasn't followed up on that. And he did seem to be a little bit more responsive to Spanish than English, but the mom doesn't have any, she doesn't speak Spanish, and he didn't have any words that anyone could identify in Spanish. He's very active and not a lot of space in the home that he's in with his mom. She's working with the Parents as Teachers program, and they are the ones that refer to early intervention. She seems very receptive to the things that she's been learning with them, and she's honest about the mistakes that she feels like she's made with this child and her other child. So as far as the child goes, he's 31 months old. His primary care physician is a nurse practitioner at their local clinic. He was recently referred for PE tubes. As I mentioned, he also has 4 front teeth that need capped because of bottle rot. And she did understand that the bottle is probably the problem for the teeth and the ears, but she continues to give it to him. She just tries to take it away as he falls asleep or just before he falls asleep. At the father's house, he doesn't seem to need the bottle, but she hasn't been able to manage her frustration and get him to sleep without it. He co-sleeps at both homes. He jabbers with some inflection. He will give fist bumps. He waves and he will point, isolating his finger. And he does a thing with his dad where they play Buzz Lightyear and they touch their fingers together. And he'll do that on demand. He can jump and climb and run and all those things. He likes to dance to the music of Paw Patrol. And he is starting to potty train, mostly at his dad's house. He finger feeds himself almost everything, doesn't really use utensils. But he doesn't like his hands slimy, and so washing hands can be a struggle. He doesn't mind as much the sticky and the other textures. Dad is able to get him to wash his hands and his hair by making a game out of it, but mom reports that she doesn't have as much patience with that, or almost like she doesn't know how to play. He isn't yet pointing to body parts or identifying things like that. He likes to scribble. And he seems to have cognitive functions of being able to uncover hidden objects and look for things that are hidden. And he was able to make cuts in the paper using both of his hands, kind of like shears. So that's just kind of where we're at. I'm gonna go to the next slide. So the parents' main priorities at this time are around getting him to communicate what he needs without the frustration and the hitting and pulling and screaming. They would also like him to understand and follow simple commands. So FSP outcomes that we're working on is that the mom will learn at least 10 strategies for helping him to regulate and calm when he's upset. That she'll be able to identify at least 5 cues that let her know when he's starting to get upset or acting tired or hungry. She kind of reported that she was not aware of what his cues, like the dad is better at reading cues. And that she'll follow through with referrals for the dental, the ear, nose, and throat specialist so that we can make sure that he's hearing clearly and that he won't be in pain. That's not contributing to the delays. The child outcomes is that he'll at least have 4 words to make requests for drink, food, and play things that he wants to do.
Thank you, Crystal. So just as we move into our breakout groups and figuring out solutions to help this child, we're going to be doing it within the tiers of the pyramid model. So I'll make sure that your group will know, your hub members, will know which tier you're doing, but we're going to have one group focus on tier 1 with universal support. And this is more of daily routines and activities, helping the environment generally and promoting those positive relationships. What are some solutions to help this family and solutions that could go on that ISFP? Another group will be handling tier 2, a little bit more focused, some extra assistance that the child or the parents might need, maybe more towards specific skills. And then another group will be doing tier 3 for more individualized and specialized support to help with this child. So here's just a little bit more about the different tiers, but I think we're going to go ahead and go into breakout rooms so we have enough time to discuss. Tier 1, that will be Amy and Ankita's group. Tier 2, with the more slightly specialized support, will be Betsy and Mandy. And tier 3 will be Janet and Kurt and Debbie. So we will go ahead and go into breakout groups.
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Is the father, where it says father reports, is the father participating in the visit, or is that the mother saying what the father reports?
No, they got the father on the phone while I was there, and we faced him, so he was part of it.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. And then I'll just, Crystal, if you're okay with this, I'll move you to each of the groups for a couple minutes. So if anyone has any further questions, they can ask. And we will come back around 2:20. Okay, I'll just give everyone a second to get back into the main room. But it sounded like everyone had really amazing discussions going on. And for the last 5-6 minutes, I just wanted to see 1 or 2 suggestions that each group had. So I'll start with the tier 1 suggestions with Amy and Ankita, and then we'll move to Betsy and Mandy, and then Janet and Kurt, if you guys just want to share one thing that your group talked about. So Amy and Ankita.
We talked really a lot of amazing things that we could support the family. One was like streamlining like TAP, like parents and teachers and the early intervention collaborating together. So that's streamlining the information and then providing step by step the guidance to the mother. And then also like providing positive affirmation to the mother, reminding what she is doing well and taking away of all the negative feelings that she is having, like or failing as a mother. So not to emphasizing on it, but emphasizing on the positive aspects that's happening.
Awesome, thank you. And then Betsy and Mandy's group.
Mandy, go ahead. You're more knowledgeable about this.
I didn't take very many notes, so we just talked about that it's really important to get the medical aspect figured out, because if the kiddo is in pain or having a hearing issue, then that needs to be remedied because it will affect behavior. And then also, you know, there's the possibility that the child feels emotionally stable with dad, so he's acting out with mom, or he feels emotionally stable with mom, which is causing him to act out more with her. But we decided it would be important to help mom find positives about how she feels about her son, things that she likes about him, things that make her smile, and also be able to create some opportunities for the child and the mom to have good experiences together with, you know, doing an activity and being able to build that connection together so that they can build on that relationship.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And then Janet and Kurt.
Yeah, so we decided that tier 1 and 2 folks had done such a good job that they had supported mom and that the behaviors had decreased. No, I'm joking, but that's how it should work, right? So we're at this stage, if those behaviors are still continuing, to really look at doing a behavior support plan. To hopefully we don't know the relationship between the mom and dad, except it seems to be okay, but to bring everybody together who is surrounds this child and to get information from both parties, to even if the provider could observe the child with the father or the grandparent, that would give a lot of good information and data to track his behavior, and then to really write a strategic behavior support plan with strategies for mom. Maybe there might be a referral to Southwest Mental Health in there in the behavior support plan, definitely following up with what Mandy said as the referrals to the doctors to follow. That will be part of the plan. Anything else, Kurt, that I've missed?
No, I just thought the need to really get on top of getting them referred to the transition process for school.
Yeah.
But that goes along with that early intervention. So yeah, great job, Janet. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really important that because this is that, you know, it's probably a special ed referral. So it needs to be on top of that and not lose them, because this sounds like a family that could get lost somewhere along the way.
Well, thank you for sharing. Those sounded like really great suggestions. Just a reminder for those of you who are taking notes, if you could send them to Faustine, her email is in the chat. And then if you would please fill out the feedback survey, we have a link in the chat right now, but we'll also send a follow-up email after this. And that's how you'll be able to get your certificate of attendance. And that's really helpful for us to help these continue being useful for you all. So thank you all for joining today, and I hope you have a great rest of your Monday.
Nice job, Hannah and team. Well done.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.